Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHD and welcome to this full review of the 2019 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Great to see you guys here in the chat and great to see everyone as always, but I just need to address something before we get into the race review. Now, you guys will know if you're watching the race watch along, and there was plenty of you watching it. We, of course, got copyright striked during the stream. Now, there is nothing I could do about that. I apologize, but there's nothing I could have done about it. That's just the way it is, unfortunately. It was absolute bullshit. That's a fact. It was absolute bullshit. The company have dropped it. The strike has been redacted. And I can now stream again. So that's why I'm streaming right now. Hopefully this doesn't affect my, the standing of my channel, and hopefully it doesn't affect the way we're growing, because guys, we've done so well this week. So many big videos. My qualifying watch along was the biggest video I've had on this new channel. It's almost at 50,000 views. We had 1,200 people watching live yesterday, and I think we would have had 1,000 people watching the race watch along eventually if we didn't get copyright striked. So it is such rubbish, such rubbish. But again, there's nothing we can do about it. And good news, this company, I have been in contact with them, and from what I've been told, this will hopefully never happen again in regards to copyright issues with this company. So it looks as though it's just a small, or say, minor-ish issue, but there you go. That's just the way it is. Sorry again for what happened. I know we were flying along, so many viewers having great fun with it, even though the race, as I'll get onto in a moment, wasn't exactly the most exciting after the 51 laps ended. But again, that's just the way it is. But hopefully we can really get back at it in terms of viewership and views for the Spanish Grand Prix in 2 weeks. And I think we can do so. And don't worry, guys. I ain't going to give up. I ain't going to delete my channel. I ain't going to do any of that. I'm going to keep going. And we will achieve the goals that I have set, and really we've set, for the end of the year. That's 10k subs by the end of the year. And I am very, very motivated to conquer these things that annoyingly happen, and get those goals met by the end of the year. And we are looking very good for that. And yeah, I think what we're basically going to do now is just move on and act like it didn't happen, because that's the only thing we can do. And when it comes to uploads and videos, that's all I am going to do from now on. We're just going to act like it never happened. Yeah, there you go. And we'll now get into the race review. And if you don't know the results of the Grand Prix, well, let me quickly show you what exactly happened. So Valtteri Bottas took his second win in 2019. Lewis Hamilton finished in second. Sebastian Vettel finished in third. Verstappen was fourth. Leclerc fifth. Perez sixth. Sainz seventh. Norris eighth. Stroll ninth. And Kimi Raikkonen in P10. And then finishing the race, but not finishing in the points, Albon, Giovinazzi, Magnussen, Hulkenberg, and the two Williamses. And retiring, Grosjean, Gasly, Kvyat, and Daniel Ricciardo. But first, we'll go on to Mercedes, and I'll quickly just talk about them. And then, guys, I'm going to bring Nib along, because he is actually going to be on this race review because of what happened in the watch-along. So I'll bring him on in just a moment. But quickly, I'll go through Mercedes and what happened. Yeah, they dominated the race. Easy 1-2. Bottas did very, very well to win this Grand Prix and hold off Lewis Hamilton at the start and also the very end of the Grand Prix. And for me, thoroughly deserves to win this race. And it's great to see him get redemption for last year, where the win was so cruelly took away from him with about 2 laps to go. It's great to see that he got the win that he deserved to get last year, and he deserved the win this year. So fantastic for Bottas. Drove very well, and really thoroughly beat Hamilton this weekend. And this is what Valtteri had to say after taking his second win in 2019. He said, "It was a tough race, even though maybe not that much happening at the front. Lewis was putting pressure on me putting pressure on me all the time. I was happy to see the checkered flag and take this first place." So that's what he had to say after the Grand Prix finished. And here are the key stats. Wins his second race in 2019. He now retakes the lead of the championship. I will show the Drivers' Championship standings later on. And this is Mercedes' third win in Baku. But for Lewis Hamilton, good race. He wasn't bad. I think he did the best. Maybe not the best he could have done, but given how he has been this weekend, that's basically how he's been. He has been second best to Bottas, really, since the start of qualifying. So, really, I think he did all he could. Tried to put Valtteri under a lot of pressure at the end, but Valtteri did not crack under pressure, and Lewis finished in second. And I think Lewis Hamilton, to be honest, will be happy finishing second for now, because, again, the team is continuing to pull away from Ferrari and Red Bull. And this is what Hamilton had to say after the Grand Prix finish. He said, "Congrats to Valtteri. He drove really well and made no mistakes." And then said, "This has to be the best start to a season that this team has ever had." It is, and also in, I think, F1 history. And I'm grateful to be a part of it. But now I'm going to bring Nib on to get his thoughts on Mercedes and, of course, the rest of the teams after them. Nib, how are you doing, mate, after the Grand Prix?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm a bit tired. It's 3 a.m. here in the morning, but Mercedes, they were fantastic all weekend. Well, not all weekend long. When it mattered in qualifying on Saturday, and then on race day Sunday. Sorry, just give me a second. Yep, there we go. But Mercedes comfortable all race long, were never under really any threat from Vettel, except for I think a couple of laps after Hamilton pitted, where Vettel was slightly close. He was about 1.5 seconds behind, but they were comfortable all race long. The only time that they were really under pressure was when their drivers were side by side through turn 1, 2, and 3. But apart from that, very comfortable weekend for Mercedes. Once again, showing that practice results cannot be trusted, even if Ferrari are a second and a half faster. They can't be trusted. Mercedes will always have something to bring back, something to answer with. And it's exactly what they did on Saturday, and it's exactly what they did once again on Sunday. I must say, I think Lewis Hamilton himself is now regretting that he was a little bit cautious and a little bit fair with Valtteri on the first lap. I think he could have been a lot more aggressive, as Hamilton usually is. So I think in the next few races, we'll see a much more aggressive Hamilton if it comes to side-by-side battling with Bottas, because I think it's emerging that the championship is going to be between Bottas and Hamilton, and that Bottas is going to be his main championship rival now. So Lewis will have to try and win that minor game battle, which he pretty much will, because he just wins everything basically. Hamilton wins everything, of course. But yeah, he was good in the race, and so was Valtteri Bottas. He didn't make a mistake. Of course, we've seen him make mistakes before, leading the race, which didn't cost him, and also some which did. And he drove a fantastic race. Did Bottas deserved his win after what happened last year, where of course he ran over the debris on down the main straight and got that puncture. He's got his win back, and I'm very pleased for Valtteri Bottas. But once again, another dominant display by Mercedes, and they now comfortably, I think it's 74 points ahead of Ferrari in the constructors' standings.
Yeah, another dominant display by them. And also, I said this just before we started, Nib, and I think most people, if not everyone in the chat and watching, will agree. I think Valtteri Bottas has already earned another contract for Mercedes for 2020, because I don't think this form is going to stop. The next track, for example, Spain, he's good around there. Canada is great. Of course, Austria, he's fantastic. So there's races coming up where Valtteri will be just as good, if not better. I think Valtteri's done enough already for a contract next year, and hopefully can maintain a championship challenge to Lewis Hamilton for as long as possible in 2019. And if he can do that, then I think everyone would really have a lot of respect for Bottas for being so close to Hamilton. And I personally have a lot of respect for him for being so close so far this season. But we'll now move on to Ferrari. And if you are a Ferrari fan, I'm afraid to say your season is over. 2019 is going to go down as a disappointing year / a failure, because coming into 2019, Ferrari looked very good. They looked like they were going to have a good enough car to go for the World Championship. And already after 4 races, I have to say, the drivers and the Constructors' Championship is over for Ferrari. The drivers won't win it. The drivers, for one, are not consistent enough, and they're not quick enough at the moment. But mainly the car, performance-wise, just cannot compete with Mercedes. So Ferrari are really out of the 2019 World Championships, and they have to concentrate, I think, for the next few races in just improving their car. But let's talk about their race. So Vettel got away third from where he qualified, stayed there, got caught up by Leclerc, as we'll get onto in a moment. But mainly Vettel did nothing in this race. That's not a bad thing against him. I think that's more so to do with how the Ferrari car is right now. But Vettel had the quietest race probably he has had in his entire time at Ferrari. He didn't have to do anything in this Grand Prix. This is what Vettel had to say after finishing on the podium. He didn't say much. This is all he had to say. He said it was crucial to get third. Good for Charles also to get the fastest lap and snatch it away from the Mercedes boys. But yeah, Vettel, very, very uneventful third place. And I just don't see how Sebastian or Charles can have a real pop at the World Championship. And talking of Charles Leclerc, let me go on to him now. He had a very good race up until his first pit stop. He was so quick on the medium tyres, passing Ricciardo, Kvyat, the 2 McLarens, Perez, and Max Verstappen. Then was catching Hamilton, Vettel, and Bottas by 2.5 to 3 seconds a lap. Then they pitted, and then he stayed out until lap 35, put on the soft tyres, and the tyres didn't work for him. Now, I've seen plenty of people saying Charles Leclerc was put on the wrong strategy, or Ferrari have sabotaged Leclerc's race. I disagree, because 2 things. One, Ferrari, I don't think, knew that the soft tyre would be so bad in the second stint. But also, if Charles Leclerc did not crash in qualifying, he could have gone for the victory. Because you saw how quick those medium tyres were, and he got through into Q3 on the medium tyres. So he would have started on them anyway if he didn't crash. So it's his fault for why he's finished in P5, in my opinion. I don't think you can blame Ferrari. Yeah, Ferrari should have had a faster car this weekend, but Leclerc shouldn't have made the mistake he did, because he really could have gone for the win if he didn't make that mistake. So I have to say that's more so Leclerc's fault for what happened in qualifying, for why he's finished 5th in the race. He does have the fastest lap, but let's be honest, it's not going to make Ferrari's weekend any better. Nib, for Ferrari, do you think their championship bid is over, and what do you think of their race?
Do I think the championship bid is over? No. But it is going to be a long, 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 long way back from here against the powerhouse that is Mercedes Benz. It's going to take some sort of miracle, or I don't know, something very special for them to win even one of the championships so far this season. They're 4 points behind in the constructors, and I think Vettel's 34 or 35 behind Hamilton and Bottas. So absolutely miles behind already. Just weren't quick enough in the race with Ferrari, especially in the first stint with Sebastian Vettel. He was absolutely nowhere. After about 9 laps, he was about 7 seconds off the lead of Sorry, no, not even off the lead off Hamilton. He was 10 seconds off Bottas. So poor pace in the first stint by Ferrari. They really struggled on the soft tire in the race. Leclerc was awful on it as well. In the second stint, it was just quite clear to see that that car favoured the medium tyre, and because of Leclerc's mistake and him starting on that medium tyre, it kind of compromised his race because it would have been better to start on that soft tyre at the start, get that out of the way, and then just go from there with your good pace on the medium tyre in the last stint of the race. And that's why he had to go so long, because that soft tyre just wasn't working. It wasn't lasting either, and it kind of compromised his race. His own mistake compromised him in the race. So no one to blame but himself, that is for sure. But Ferrari, once again, another disappointing weekend. A weekend where they looked quick all weekend up until Q2, where um, where Leclerc binned it in the wall. But hey, oh, that's the way this sport goes sometimes. You might destined for pole, looks like you might win the race, and you make that mistake. And this sport is a sport of fine margins, and for Leclerc, that little lockup cost him big time this weekend. He could have potentially had pole, gone on to win the race, potentially like Valtteri Bottas did, but um, just once again disappointing from Ferrari. And my prediction at the start of the season, where I said Vettel would win the championship, and I think I said that Ferrari would win the constructors. I can't remember. It was a long time ago now. It's looking very silly. That's for sure. That's for sure. And I'm not sure if I quite agree with that anymore. I'm already flip flopping on that, but Ferrari, they need to improve when it comes to Spain. Of course, they looked very good in preseason testing there, but from what we've seen so far, I don't think we can say that they're favourites going into any race anymore. It Mercedes are just that good. They're very good at sandbagging and disguising their pace of the car. So I can't trust Ferrari anymore on pace, on strategy, on anything. I can't trust Ferrari, and I can't trust one of their drivers already, Sebastian Vettel. He makes too many mistakes, and then we had Leclerc making a mistake. Of course, Leclerc is young, but you know it's okay for him to make these mistakes, but it certainly cost them big time this weekend, and they need to improve for Spain.
Absolutely. I think they just need to concentrate on improving the car in the vital areas, and then they can pick up some good race wins. But realistically, are they going to win the drivers and constructors? I just don't see it, and I don't think they'll actually be able to compete for it. And I think their fight later on in the season might be with Red Bull, because I expect Red Bull with Honda to develop very well over 2019. So Ferrari and Red Bull might be closer to each other than Mercedes and Ferrari are. But yeah, 2019 so far for them has been, you have to say, a disaster compared to where they thought they would be after 4 races. Absolute disaster. Next up, Red Bull. Max Verstappen finishing in P4. Once again, Max Verstappen getting the best result possible from his car. Very Fernando Alonso-esque so far for Max in 2019. And really, again, didn't have that eventful of a race like Vettel. He did get stuck behind Perez for the first 3 or 4 laps. Then he passed him very nicely down to turn 1. Then got passed by Leclerc when Leclerc was making his way through the field, but then because Verstappen pitted so early and made the time back up, Verstappen got back up to P4, and because then Leclerc struggled on the soft tyres, Verstappen was able to comfortably hang on for fourth. He could have got third if he was, say, ahead of Perez at the end of lap one. So I don't think it was impossible for him to get third, like I was predicting going into the Grand Prix. But realistically, pace-wise, the Red Bull car hasn't quite been good enough to get onto the podium. So I think Max did absolutely fine. And going into the next two Grand Prix, if Red Bull can bring a big upgrade to Spain like they normally do, then I think Red Bull are going to be very competitive in the next couple of races. But for Pierre Gasly, he suffered his first DNF of 2019 with some sort of failure of the Honda power unit. And it's a shame because he did very well to go from the pit lane, and I think the very back of the pit lane, as it was Raikkonen and Kubica starting ahead of him. He did very well to get to P6. He did start on the medium tyres, which did help a lot. Just see how Leclerc did in the first stint of the Grand Prix on the medium tyres. But yeah, was doing very well. Got up to P6. Was so far ahead of Perez in P7 that he could pit and still come out in P6. But then his car failed him, so that's a shame. And you know what? That performance by him this weekend, I think, was the best Pierre Gasly has been so far in 2019. So it's good to see that Pierre is improving after what was a disastrous performance in Bahrain. Shanghai was an improvement, and I think Baku was a further improvement. So good to see, and hopefully that does continue. Nib, for Red Bull, what did you think of their Azerbaijan Grand Prix?
It was just a pretty bang average Red Bull race. What I pretty much expected, even though I did predict Max Verstappen to win the race, of course, but I was only having a little bit of fun with that. You know, I had no idea who would win the race, so that's why I predicted Max would win the race. Just some sort of banzai prediction there, that's for sure. But I think Pierre Gasly was outstanding today. He's really now settling into that car. Fantastic performance. He looked good in qualifying in that, certainly on that lap in Q1, of course, where he exceeded the max fuel flow limit. Flashbacks to Ricardo at Australia in 2014. Fantastic. that brilliant moment was stolen from me when I was right across from the podium, seeing an Aussie drive on the podium for the first time at Albert Park. Snatched away. How dare they? But anyway, moving on, I digress. Gasly was fantastic, I must say. Such a shame. I believe it was a drive shaft issue with the Red Bull. I don't think that's been confirmed, but I actually don't think it was an issue with the Honda power unit. So a bit unfortunate there for Pierre Gasly, having a fantastic race and certainly the best weekend he's had all season long. He's been getting slightly better as each race has gone on, but he was truly on the pace this weekend, which is good to see because it would be nice if Max could be challenged. Because at the moment, Max Verstappen is doing a fantastic job, just getting the best he can out of the car, and that's something new that we're seeing from Max. You know, of course, we all know how quick he is, how good he is, but all the times he wouldn't exactly get the best result he possibly could. But we're seeing him do that so far this season. So kudos to Max for his fantastic driving. But yeah, Gasly certainly did pull off some nice overtakes. I didn't quite pay attention to Max too much. I think he was getting close to Vettel, but then the virtual safety car hampered any chances of him catching Vettel because he was catching before that VSC came out for Gasly actually. So poor Max Verstappen there couldn't end up catching Sebastian Vettel. End up finishing about 6 seconds behind. So disappointing end to the Grand Prix, but the best he could have hoped for indeed. Max Verstappen with another fantastic drive, and as we're moving now towards the true beginning of the European season, as most people will like to say. I think we really will start to see Red Bull get better in the coming races with potential upgrades coming in Barcelona.
Yeah, I think Red Bull will be better in Barcelona for sure than they were in Baku, because Baku doesn't quite suit their car in terms of the way the track is. I think Barcelona will suit them more, and if they can develop even more, Red Bull, I don't think will be that far behind Ferrari. I mean, they might even finish ahead of them. That's honestly how I expect Spain to possibly go. And with the way Ferrari are disappointing, would you bet against Ferrari disappointing and being behind Red Bull? I wouldn't. But there you go. But before we go on to the midfield, guys, right now in the live chat and the comments, let us know, what did you think of the performances of the top three teams? For Mercedes, what do you think of them and how great they were? For Ferrari, do you think their championship bid is over for the drivers and constructors? Let us know. And for Red Bull, what did you think of their Grand Prix and how the two drivers got on? And before, actually, we go on to live chat, I just want to say, to help out the channel after such a difficult day, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell for more content like this, as we will, and I guarantee we will, be doing watch-alongs for every Grand Prix in 2019, come hell or high water. So, yeah, don't forget to subscribe. Bottom right of the screen, you can click subscribe right there. Or go to my homepage, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell. Also, don't forget to hit this video with a like, as usual. But yeah, before we go on to the midfield, I just want to see what people think of the top teams. Yeah, let me just see what you guys think. Great to see you all here. Tonka Toy Truck says Red Bull just are not that close to Ferrari yet. They'll definitely get closer, though. They will definitely be closer. And I wouldn't be surprised if at Monaco, for example, Red Bull were clearly ahead. Mainly because of the characteristics of that track, though. Simon Troop, Red Bull will be strong in Spain and Monaco. Absolutely. Mario Master asks, do you think Red Bull possibly will challenge Mercedes in Spain if the upgrades work? No. If their upgrades work, they will probably be able to beat Ferrari in Spain. But Mercedes, no, I think that's a step too far. If they're going to do that, then they need to continue developing as the season goes on and hope in the latter half of the season, as usual with Red Bull, that they have one of the best cars, if not the best car, on the grid. So, yeah, not yet, but we'll see how they are against Ferrari. Right, let me find some more comments. Sebastian says, so annoyed with Ferrari. Championship over, just need to go for wins now. I am going to Spain for the race. Maybe I am the luck that Ferrari need. Yep, hopefully you are. Crystal Racing says Mercedes will win 15 out of 16, or 15 to 16 races at least. World Championship is between Bottas and Hamilton. Indeed. Will F1 says, if Mercedes win the best two races, then I can't realistically see them losing the championships. Ferrari are still in contention for now, but they need big improvements. I don't think they are in contention, and I'll show, by the way, the championship table later on. Crystal Racing says, as usual, Red Bull's best hopes are Monaco, Hungary, Singapore, Mexico. Warwick Ball asks, what is the main issue with Ferrari's car at the moment? Well, I think it's the front of the car. I think the front of the car is not as lively in a positive way as the Mercedes car is, and I think it might have something to do with the front wing design that Ferrari have gone for, because it is different to the Mercedes one and is also similar to the Alfa Romeo one, even though even the Alfa Romeo one is different to the Ferrari. So I think it has something to do with the front wing, because if you look at China, they were really struggling to get the car into the corners, and that comes down to front downforce. If you're struggling to get your car, you know, absolutely swung into a corner, that's front downforce that you're missing. So I think it's to do with the front wing, but I think as 2019 goes on, we'll see, say, more confirmation of that. Um, and right, I'll read out one final comment and then we'll go on to the midfield. Prachuria Pratim Das, sorry if I've mispronounced that, says Ferrari is fighting Red Bull Honda, not Mercedes. The sooner they realise this, they will stop wasting Leclerc's races, hoping for someone else to screw up like they did today. Well, you say that, but Leclerc screwed up for Ferrari. It goes both ways, in my opinion. And I'll answer this final question from RD, who asks, do you think he can win the championship? Right now, I would say no. But if he continues to keep this up until Silverstone time, then my opinion might be different. But yeah, we'll move on from the top teams and now go on to the midfield and start off with Renault. Yes, that is a Renault. It's just a sun making it look like a predominantly black car. But yeah, terrible weekend for Renault. Daniel Ricciardo was looking good for a points finish, but then when it did what he did with Danny Kvyat, but it was looking good for him in terms of position, not in terms of pace. The Renault car pace-wise this weekend has been terrible. And for me, and I'm sure Nib will echo this, Renault, even in Shanghai, I'd have to say, they've had a terrible first 4 races compared to where they should be. In Australia, yeah, they had a good result, but they weren't quick enough. Bahrain, terrible qualifying, good race, then had a double DNF. Shanghai, the pace was good, but they barely got the result that they did with Ricciardo. And then this weekend, they've been top to bottom terrible. And I think the drivers have done well with the car because it looks very unstable, honestly, to drive at times. But yeah, Ricciardo's race came to an end when he tried to go down the inside of Danny Kvyat, went straight on, and then as Kvyat was trying to get out the escape road, Ricciardo reversed straight into him and broke his rear wing. So yeah, not great for him. And then Hulkenberg was, 14th? No pace, did nothing. Renault car's terrible. Yeah, I think that pretty much describes Renault's weekend. Nib, what do you think of Renault this weekend? And what are your thoughts of Renault after the first 4 races?
Well, Renault were bitterly, bitterly disappointing so far this season and were just awful this weekend, really. Nico Hulkenberg was absolutely nowhere. You didn't even mention him because he was just absolutely nowhere. But, oh dear. Oh dear. Daniel Ricciardo, what are you doing, fella? He was having a reasonably good race, was overtaking all of those people that pitted before him on those he had fresh and medium tires. But then when he was going to pass Danny Kvyat full P10 for a point, he locked up going down the inside. He's been struggling with locking up all through the weekend in Baku, and then he just reverses into Danny Kvyat. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it before. I don't know. I don't think I've even. It's something that would happen in an Aldi supermarket. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what happened with Ricardo. It's simply not good enough, and he thoroughly deserves his 3-place grid penalty. Come on, Ricardo. That's just unacceptable. Like if now just imagine if Danny Kvyat was the one who did this. They'd be like, "Oh, the torpedo strikes back," or whatever this rubbish is. But this time it was the torpedo that got stung by the honey badger, and um, but horrific by Ricardo. He's having a solid race, and then he just threw it away. He threw it all away. I remember we were slightly less chilled in Discord after what happened, but we just couldn't fathom really what had happened there. But disappointing for Renault, and hopefully there are some upgrades coming of some sort because with the money that they're spending in the midfield, they really should be at the top of the midfield, up with where McLaren are, and of course we'll get onto them a bit later. But just simply not good enough from Renault so far this season, and they really do need to improve because otherwise Cyril will be under pressure.
Yes, he will. And if Renault finish where they are in the constructors right now, which I think is 7th, then I think he'll get the sack, honestly, by the end of 2019. But yeah, Renault, they've been really, compared to where we thought they would be, they've been crap in the first 4 races. And what they need is an upgrade which brings them up a level for Spain. Because if they continue to do this in Spain and Monaco, I don't see how they're going to finish in 4th in the constructors, because their car fundamentally just doesn't seem to really be that good in any area. I think the driver's doing the best job they can, but they don't have the car. They really don't have the car. So yeah, they've got to improve the car to get up to the level where they should at least be in. Talking off McLaren though, we'll go on to them now. Yeah, McLaren finishing in P7 and P8, and that is the best result they have had this season. Yes, Norris finished in P6 in Bahrain, but as a team, it was a great race for McLaren. They were making some nice moves early on in the Grand Prix, you know, passing Danny Kvyat, also Carlos Sainz passing Lando Norris, but Norris got him back again after the first stop, but then Norris pitted under the virtual safety car, and that put Sainz back ahead of Lando Norris. So yeah, I think the drivers did well, and as a team they did very well. And if you don't know, guys, McLaren are now 4th in the Constructors' Championship. Hopefully this type of result can be a bit more of a normal result for McLaren. But one thing I do want to say to McLaren is, please keep it up. Don't drop the ball, because if you can keep up this type of, performance, then 2019, I think, will be the first real positive season McLaren have had in quite a while. Yes, it's still not where McLaren want to be, but compared to last year and the feeling around the team, it'd be great if they could keep this type of performance up. So yeah, hopefully McLaren keep this up. 7th and 8th, fantastic. Nib, for McLaren, what do you think of their race, and what do you think of their car at the moment in terms of the pace of the car?
Very good by McLaren. They got a good solid points finish today. Of course, moving them up into 4th place in the Constructors' Championship. I did expect them to have a good weekend here in Baku. Of course, I was expecting that in China, but of course they were ruined by the torpedo there. But for McLaren, solid weekend. It looks like they had a good car all weekend, and they delivered on race day when it mattered. That's for sure. Lando Norris, I'm not too sure why he pitted underneath the virtual safety car. I didn't hear. I wasn't paying too much attention at that time. Quite honestly, I was focusing on some other things, but I'm not too sure why he pitted, because that kind of ruined him from getting P7 or potentially P6 from Sergio Perez. So not too sure why they pitted Lando Norris, but he drove a fantastic race, and so did Carlos Sainz. They were both fantastic in the race, and McLaren certainly did deserve the points that they got today, maybe in the reverse order, but oh well. Sainz finishes ahead of Norris, and looking very promising for McLaren. But of course, I think they were 4th in the Constructors' Championship this time last year, and we all seen how that ended up. But there's a big caveat to that. Their car is quite clearly massively better than last year at this stage of the season. So McLaren looking good, but they need to continue it. They sure do.
Yep, they do. And I also think the reason they were 4th in the Constructors last year at this same point was because of a certain driver named Fernando Alonso, who we know is great at outperforming the car. Yeah, just if they can keep this up, then it'd be great. I think in Spain, McLaren will be... I don't think they'll be bad, but I don't think they will be as good as they were this weekend. But I think in the race, because as we've seen in 2019, McLaren have a good race pace car, I think they'll definitely be strong when it comes to contending for points. But pace-wise in qualifying and stuff like that, maybe not as good as this weekend, but they will definitely be right in the hunt for points again in Spain and for the races after that. But we'll move on from them and go on to Alfa Romeo. And, well, if they didn't have penalties for both drivers, I think Alfa would have had a similar race to McLaren, because that car was very quick. I think people forget this. That car was very quick. Antonio Giovinazzi started 17th, finished in 12th. Kimi Raikkonen started from the pit lane and finished in 10th. So this Alfa, if it started in the position it qualified, I think they could have gone and done a McLaren in this Grand Prix. So it's a shame that it happened, but that's just the way it happens sometimes. Considering where they started from, good result. But considering how they did in qualifying and how they were looking or how they were expecting a certain result coming into the weekend, I think Alfa have disappointed in terms of the end result. I will say again, in terms of where they started, good result. But coming into the weekend, they would have expected more than 1 point. So, yeah, a bit disappointing there. But I will say, this is just one bad race. The previous 3 races for Alfa were fantastic. And I think all they got to do is hopefully get some new upgrades on the car. Hopefully fix this front wing issue and make sure it doesn't get them disqualified again. And just regroup and go again from Spain on into the heart of the European leg of the calendar. Nib, for Alfa, they weren't really on camera a lot, but what do you think of, say, the result that they got from where they started?
Yeah, that's for sure. Barely noticed them during the race. That's for sure. But the Kimster, another points finish. He's just driving a fantastic season so far. He has been absolutely superb and arguably one of the best drivers on the grid so far, with probably Valtteri Bottas or Max Verstappen, in my opinion. So the Kimster is doing a fantastic job. He really is driving the wheels off of that car. But I also must say, Antonio Giovinazzi did a fantastic job this weekend. Got P7, or was it P7 in qualifying? I think it was.
P8.
So P8 in qualifying. So he did a fantastic job in qualifying, but sadly it just didn't translate to the race after he started last on the grid. Indeed, so poor Giovinazzi there. He had a good weekend, and he couldn't quite show exactly what he had in the race because of that penalty. But if this is a sign of things to come, it'll be very good, because this is what we want to see from Giovinazzi. He was very poor the first 3 races, was nowhere near Kimi, but was certainly a lot better today and a lot better on Saturday. So hopefully we can see this coming into Barcelona and see Kimi being tested by his young Italian teammate. But it's another solid day for Alfa. Disappointing that they couldn't get a double points finish, but that was due to what happened. And thankfully, I believe for Spain that they're going to be bringing a new front wing, which will fix the issue. They were aware of the issue leading into this race, but didn't have the parts to fix the issue. So that is why they failed that deflection test on Sunday morning before the race. And that's why Kimi started in the pit lane. But a good weekend in the context of what happened. So I'm sure Alpha will be looking for a bit of a smoother weekend when it comes to the Barcelona circuit.
I think if they can again just regroup and go again in Spain, they should get a positive result. If they get, say, a car in the top 9, considering how that track is, I think that'd be a positive result, because I don't think that track is going to suit that car as much as this track did in terms of how they were in qualifying in 8th and 9th. And I also want to shout out Antonio Giovinazzi, because I also did criticise him a lot in the first 3 races. And yeah, I can admit he was very good this weekend. He was unfortunate with the penalty, but I think was very good this weekend. But I want to say, keep it up. Don't just do it 1 in every 4 or 5 races. Please keep this up going forward, because if you do, then you could contribute to a successful season for you and your team. So hopefully he does do so. Next up is Haas, who were nowhere, very similar to Renault, were absolutely nowhere in the midfield. Started 12th and 14th. They did, I think, at one point have a car in the points. Grosjean hadn't pitted yet. I know he was in the points for a long time, but K-Mag, I think, did get into the points briefly, but then came into the pit lane. But yeah, pace-wise, again, Haas, terrible. And it all comes down to how that car is on race day and their issues with tyres, whether it's warming them up or not wearing them out too much. They just cannot make those tyres do what they want. And I get the feeling that's really going to blight their season, because how are they really going to get these issues sorted? Because there's so many circuits on the calendar where tyres are important. For example, the next track, Spain. Tyres are so important at that track. And if you struggle when it comes to tyres there, then yeah, you are going to be off the pace. And also other tracks like Hungary and, you know, tracks like that. So, yeah, Haas, very poor, similar to Renault. I think, honestly, Renault were probably better than Haas. Only slightly, but I think Renault were better than Haas this weekend. And yeah, it just really does go from bad to worse. It has got only worse, I think, from the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne. And Nib, for Haas, what do you think of their Grand Prix? But also, do you think they're going to improve, or do you think they're just going to continue to go down and down and down and down?
Well, ever since the Australian Grand Prix, it has been an absolute disaster, of course. But in Barcelona, of course, they really need to improve because they simply have not been good enough so far this season for Haas. They were looking very good in Australia. Of course, they are always good around Albert Park. We've seen that in the past. But just they're really struggling with those tyre temperatures, getting them in the right window. And they're not the only team struggling with it. Ferrari is struggling with it to a degree, and certainly a lot of other teams on the grid are struggling with these tight issues, but no one more than Haas are. And it's really compromising their pace so far this season. They just couldn't get the tyres in the right window. Magnussen was miles quicker than Grosjean all weekend. Grosjean didn't get hit by Ericsson this weekend, but it certainly might have helped him. I don't know, might have put him out of his misery because he was not having a fantastic afternoon in Baku. But of course, they looked solid in preseason testing at Barcelona, so they could perhaps get a good result there in Barcelona. I'll say it properly this time. But I'm not sure with Haas. They're an unknown quantity. One weekend they could be good, you know, in quali they could be good, but then the race could be a disaster. But it's just the way it goes with Haas at the moment, really. I've turned this whole Haas
Oh.
conversation and review into a massive meme, but but I just really don't know where Haas are. They need to fix these issues that they're having with the tires and try to improve. And maybe, I don't know, there might be some upgrades for Spain. Usually everyone brings some upgrades for Spain, so hopefully with some upgrades they can really improve.
Yeah, there was plenty of puns in that discussion about Haas. I think in qualifying in Barcelona. Oh my god. Yeah, in qualifying in Barcelona, I think Haas will be better than they were in qualifying in Baku, mainly because we know temperature-wise in Spain it does tend to be a lot hotter, say around this time a year, than it does in Baku. So that should help, but in the race, they're going to do the same again. They're going to drop back. They're going to fall away. They're probably going to have to do an extra pit stop. So, yeah. I think the base of their car is fine. I just think it all comes down to how the car works the tyres. And that is the issue they have right now. So yeah, hopefully they do get some upgrades and improve. Next up, Toro Rosso. I'll be honest, they disappointed me. Kvyat destroyed his tyres early on and fell behind, Sainz, Norris, Leclerc, Stroll, Ricciardo, Magnussen. So many cars passed him in the first 7 laps. It was a terrible first stint for Kvyat. One of the worst first stints of a race I think I've seen in a long time in terms of tyre wear. But then, yet pitted very early on, jumped a couple cars that he did get passed by on track, and did, as Nib said earlier, get back up to P10, but then was took out by Ricciardo and had to retire because his floor was very badly damaged, as we saw on the world feed. So yeah, disappointing for Kvyat, but nothing really he could do about the retirement, but the pace was not there really. And for Albon, it's the same. The pace was not there. Only P11. He got passed and quite comfortably beaten by Kimi Räikkönen, who started from the pit lane. So that's not really that great for Toro Rosso. But yeah, pace-wise, they weren't that good. Qualifying, they were great. Race day, they really did not have a car that was worth getting a point. So yeah, disappointing for Toro Rosso. Nib, what do you think of Toro Rosso in Baku today? Were they disappointing for you, considering how great they were up until race day?
Yeah, massively disappointing. They were looking so quick, looking the quickest team of the midfield all weekend. Up until today, really, they just struggled with their rear tyres. Albon and Kvyat especially struggled with those rear tyres in the first stint. He had to pit super early. But then for Danny Kvyat, was doing a solid job in P10, and then he got boomeranged by Ricciardo. That's what it's going to be titled now. He boomeranged Kvyat. He didn't look in his mirrors and just drove straight into Kvyat. Caused a massive amount of floor damage to Kvyat, and then there was no point continuing on for the Russian. Oh my god, the amount of harsh puns that we have started now in the chat is absolutely ridiculous. I just seen JB's one about Toro Rahaso.
Oh my god.
That is quite someone. But
Oh.
I'm really gonna stop now. I'm gonna stop with the harsh puns. That enough is enough. But with Toro Rosso, just yeah, a bit disappointing. Of course, the first race where they haven't scored points so far this season. And who knows, in Barcelona they might be a little bit better. Or they'll be hoping for a better result, but I'm not too sure about them. I don't think that their car is the most or is the strongest aerodynamically. So I don't really think they'll have a good weekend in Barcelona, but who knows? They could bring some upgrades and improve the car. I think that goes for every single team. I think most every team will have some upgrades for Barcelona. So Toro Rosso, disappointing this race, really it was for them after what looked to be a very promising weekend, especially after the first couple of practice sessions. So disappointing for Toro Rosso, but you know they've got to move on, and hopefully Kvyat doesn't get boomeranged again.
Yep, hopefully not. I think in Barcelona, Toro Rosso will be better because I think their car will be better at that track than it was here. It was pretty good here, but I think Barcelona, their car will be good. And if you look at the history, Toro Rosso at that track, it does tend to be a good track for them. So I think Barcelona, they'll be fine. They'll probably nick a point knowing them. So yeah, I think they'll be fine for the next race, but the race pace today was very disappointing from Toro Rosso. Next up, Racing Point. Very good day. And Racing Point, by the way, have gone up to 5th in the Constructors' Championship by scoring 10 points in today's Grand Prix. Perez finishing in 6th. Great race. Made a great start going around the outside of Max Verstappen into turn 2. Held him off, I think, as long as he could have, really. And then, of course, settled in behind him. And then comfortably finished, I think, in P6. I know Norris was close a couple times, but the Racing Point car around Baku just had enough over the McLaren to get P6. And I think the Racing Point car was definitely one of the best midfield cars. And I think Lance Stroll today on race day proved that by finishing in P9. Very good race. He passed Ricciardo, passed Kvyat, Of course, he did get jumped by Ricciardo and Kvyat after the pit stops, but of course, when they had their little incident, he then took over and got up to P9, so good for him. But again, I will say he has to improve his qualifying, because if he can do this on the race, then he has to improve his qualifying so he can be even better with his race result, because he can do better when it comes to his overall weekend. The race day looks fine to me, but qualifying, he just cannot put it together, and he has to. Absolutely has to. So hopefully he can start to improve that, with also the Racing Point car improving. But yeah, Nib, what do you think of Racing Point? And going forward, do you think, like I think, that Racing Point are going to just get better and better as 2019 goes on?
I certainly do agree with you on that point. They're starting to understand their car a lot more now. Of course, they've only been using this car since Melbourne. I mean, sort of like everyone else. But what I'm saying is, of course, they didn't have preseason testing with their 2019 car. So that is why they had a slow start to the season. But now, at one of the better tracks in Baku, Sergio Perez, fantastic all weekend long, fantastic in qualifying, fantastic in the race. And what a move he did really do on Max Verstappen around the outside. It's not very often you see people go around the outside of Max Verstappen. So fantastic there by Sergio Perez, but Lance Stroll, oh dear mate, he just needs to get his act together in qualifying. I think that's the eighth time in a row that he's been eliminated from Q1, and it's simply not good enough, especially when Sergio Perez is doing what he's doing at the front of the grid, or near enough at the front of the grid. So Lance Stroll needs to get his act together. He had a fantastic race. I didn't quite see his start. I've seen Simon Cragland say that he had an amazing start. I haven't seen his start, but I'm sure we'll all see it on Tuesday when all of the starts and all of the actual good videos, which we should be seeing during the race, get released. So we'll probably see if his start there. But yeah, a very positive weekend for Racing Point at his track, which they are good at. Double points finish. Stroll did get ninth, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. I thought so. I just couldn't quite remember off the top of my head. But a good weekend for Racing Point, and hopefully in Spain they could get closer to the rest of the midfield at a more of a traditional racing circuit, where they have struggled so far this season. So quite an important race coming up for Racing Point.
Yeah, I think it is an important race, but I think if they can do well there and get a strong points finish, I think that really sets them up for a strong bounce back and recovery after 2018, with, of course, what happened with them getting took over and all that stuff. So I think the next race, if they can do well there, then it will really set themselves up for a great season. Let's hope they do have a good season. And last of all is Williams. Who cares? Now, I'll go on to the driver's standings and show you guys what is going on in the Drivers' Championship. So, as you can see there, Bottas 1 point clear after 4 races from Lewis Hamilton. I don't think anyone would have predicted that, would have they? Sebastian Vettel, 3rd. And you can see 35 points behind. Also, though, Max Verstappen only a point behind Sebastian Vettel. Leclerc, 47 points. Perez ahead of Gasly. I think, though, that's more so... I don't know exactly why he's ahead of Gasly, but they got the same amount of points. And so does Kimi Raikkonen. So, joint 6th, Perez, Gasly, Raikkonen. And again, Nib's point about Raikkonen being one of the best drivers this season is proven there by being joint 6th in the drivers in a midfield car. Norris, you can see there in, what's that, P9, and then Magnussen P10. He's only P10 Magnussen because of Australia. But in regards to the constructors, I don't actually have exact, bit of the constructors. But I do know the positions. The positions are Mercedes 1st, Ferrari 2nd, Red Bull 3rd, McLaren 4th, Racing Point 5th, Alfa Romeo 6th, Renault 7th, Haas 8th, Toro Rosso 9th, Williams 10th. That's the constructor standings, and they do look a lot different to how they looked going into the weekend, and they look a lot different to how we thought they would look after 4 races. So that's great to see. But before we end the stream, we're going to do a Q&A for about, I don't know, 15 to 20 minutes. So make sure in the live chat and the comment section to ask as many questions as you want. And we'll try and get round to answering as many as we can. But before I answer some of your questions, I just want to say again, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this as we do race reviews, qualifying reviews, watch-alongs for every Grand Prix weekend. So don't forget to subscribe for that content coming up from Spain on to Abu Dhabi. Bottom right of the screen, you can subscribe or go to the homepage, subscribe and hit the notifications bell. And also don't forget to hit this video with a like. But quickly, before I go on to reading out some comments on the live chat, I'm just going to have a quick drink and then clear my throat and then we'll get going again. Right. So now, let's read out your questions and I'll try to answer the best ones I can find. Also, I just want to let you guys know, considering there's so many of you here, compared to the numbers we had during this race review, I just want to let you guys know I will be doing an incident analysis for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix weekend. That will be uploaded at 12 PM UK time tomorrow. So, yeah, that'll be uploaded then. And I am going to review more than one incident. I know the race was not particularly exciting, but there is definitely incidents to look at. So that's what I'm going to be doing at 12 PM UK time tomorrow. And at the end of this stream, I'll let you know as to the other videos that are coming on the channel between now and the Spanish Grand Prix in Spain. But actually, before we go to the comments, I just want to ask Nib, what do you think of the race in terms of excitement compared to the previous 3 races? I thought this race was similar to Shanghai. I don't really know whether I'd put it as a better race than Shanghai, but it wasn't great, was it?
No, it wasn't fantastic. It was probably just a bang average usual F1 race. Of course, Hamilton Bottas got close together at the end, but of course it was all over Red Rover when Bottas got that DRS from Russell, and Bottas has said that he owes Russell a pint for that, so I'm sure he'll be getting a pint for that. But yeah, it was just a bang average race. Wasn't spectacular. I don't know if it's better than China or not. But yeah, just a bang average F1 race, in all honesty.
Yeah, it was a 5 out of 10. It was nothing you're gonna remember in 5 years' time. Yeah, it was a 50-50 race. Some overtakes, and most of the race was just meh. But yeah, we'll get to answering your questions now. Dexter Hall asks, who will have the better car in Barcelona? If you're talking at the top of the field, which I think you are, then I think Mercedes will have the best car for sure. I think in qualifying, Ferrari will be second with Red Bull third, but I think Red Bull might have a better car race day in Barcelona than Ferrari. And then after that, in the midfield, I can't really say right now. It could be anyone at the front of the midfield. Mr. Random Guy asks, do you think Ferrari would be any good in the rain? Nope, they've never really been that good in the rain. And also, you need really strong aero to be good in the rain, or to help you in the rain. And they don't have as much of that as Mercedes and even Red Bull do. Simon Cragland asks, I don't understand how slow McLaren was in China compared to Baku and vice versa with Renault. What do you think? Well, they're different tracks. I mean, Shanghai is a proper, built racetrack, and Baku is a street track with plenty of unusual corners and the longest on-throttle experience you're going to have in Formula One at the moment. So they're completely different tracks. I think Shanghai has more to do with aerodynamics and chassis than this track does. This track does have a bit of that, but you do need the power, especially in the final sector and the first sector, but you also do need to have a good car in the middle sector. But, Shanghai is a very technical racetrack, and it does really show who has good car aerodynamically or chassis-wise. So, and I think we said this on the podcast, McLaren seem to, so far in 2019, go better at, say, more power track kind of tracks. I mean, Bahrain, they were a lot better in Bahrain than Australia. And then Baku is more of a power track than Shanghai. And they were better in Baku this weekend than they were in Shanghai. So I think that kind of shows why McLaren were better in Baku, because I think their car's better suited to those kind of tracks. Not because the Renault power unit's strong, but because I think they've cut a lot of the drag out that was affecting their car's performance in 2018. Sebastian, what strengths and weaknesses will the Ferrari car have in Spain? Would it be closer to Mercedes than in China? I think Ferrari will be about the same gap, to be honest. Quarter of a second, third of a second? They won't be miles off in Spain, but they're not going to be, overtaking or right on their gearbox. They're not going to be. Let me find some more comments here. From all the midfield teams, which one do you think has improved the most? I'll ask Nib this one as well. For me, I would have to say McLaren. Because, yes, this time last year they weren't bad, but at the end of last year, McLaren were backmarkers. There were times where Williams were faster than them. I think Brazil, in 2018, Williams beat McLaren in the Grand Prix. Or it's one of those races where Williams were actually better than McLaren. It was so embarrassing. So I'd have to say McLaren, to be honest. Nib, who for you has improved the most out of the midfield?
Yeah, I'd agree with McLaren. They've had they were pretty bad. Well, awful. They were absolutely awful come the end of this season. But I'd also say Alfa Romeo, especially compared to where they were at the very start of the season at Australia, they were quite slow. So they've done a really good job to be consistently fighting for Q3 and regular point scorers now. Of course, they had Leclerc and Ericsson, of course, scoring points throughout the season, but not as quite as consistently as what they are doing at the moment. So I'd say McLaren and then probably Alfa Romeo behind them.
Yeah, I was also thinking Alpha, but I think considering again where McLaren were not that long ago at the back end of 2018, you'd have to say probably McLaren is the most improved team. And Halam asked that, and he also asks, why do you think Renault are so bad this season? For me, it comes down to two things. One, of course, the power unit, it's still not, good enough. But not only that, aerodynamically, their car is bang average. It's not a car that in the midfield is really going to get the job done, even at a track like a Monaco or a Singapore or a Hungary. It's not that special of a car. It's just, it's kind of like Toro Rosso, their car. It's just not that special. It's not that special of a car. Aerodynamically, and I said this after testing, and I think it's been proven right, their car just doesn't stand out to you. I mean, it doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look good. It's just a meh kind of car aerodynamically compared to the rest of the midfield. And of course, they're still lacking in power. So, yeah, there you go. Let me find some more questions here. Thomas Hill, do you think Renault deliberately put balloons on the track to try and bring out a safety car? No. Timothy asks, why do you think Haas is struggling so much? It is because of tyres. It's all down to tyres, whether it's warming them up for a qualifying lap or keeping them from wearing out in the Grand Prix. That is the issues they have. Sebastian asks, and this is a good one, how many wins will Ferrari get this season? Each driver, he asks, and should they start focusing on, I think he means 2020, if it gets to Britain and they are still a long way off Mercedes? I'll be honest, I don't I don't know how many races they'll win this season, and I'm going to throw it out there. This could be a 2016-esque season. Ferrari might not win a Grand Prix because when Mercedes do slip up or they are genuinely off the pace, will Ferrari be the team to pick up after them? I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure about that because Red Bull, they're going to improve a lot in 2019. To answer your second part of your question, yes. If it gets to Silverstone and they still haven't won a Grand Prix and they're way, way, way off, then yeah, they should just start focusing on 2020 because if they finish second or third, does it really matter? It's still going to be a disastrous season considering their expectations coming into the season. So yeah, if it gets to Silverstone and they're still, 3.5, 4 tenths of a second off like they were in Baku qualifying and basically the race, then yeah, I'd have to agree. I'd have to agree with that. Simon Cracklin says Ferrari will win 2 to 3 races this year. Mr. Random Guy asks, have you noticed any improvements in following another car in the run-up to notoriously hard tracks to follow in the form of Spain and Monaco? This is the thing, and I think people are right in saying this, but I think people are overrating this certain topic. The first 4 races of 2019 have not been as good as the first 4 races collectively of 2018, but the cars in 2019 can follow better. I think that has been proven. The reason the races haven't been as good is, for me, due to the performance difference between the cars. That's really it. This is the thing. Even though this race wasn't great, we still had plenty of overtaking between, Stroll, Kvyat, Ricciardo, Haas's, Kimi, Antonio Giovinazzi, Norris, Sainz, Verstappen and Perez. We still had plenty of overtakes, and it was a meh kind of race. So, yeah, I don't think it was really... It wasn't that bad of a race. It wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad. But I think we can see the cars can follow better, but just the competition maybe in certain areas isn't as strong as it needs to be to, for us to have better races. But I think the racing at the moment in terms of following another car is absolutely fine. I don't think we have to start panicking about 2020. I think the following situation has been improved. It can be improved even more, but I think it has been improved for sure for 2019. But I'll now get on to the final question of the stream, and then we'll come to the end of this race review. And the final question goes to, actually, I'll answer 2. I'll answer 2 from Dexter Hall and Sebastian. So Dexter Hall says, hey Chaz, how many race wins have you predicted so far? In terms of correct ones, I got Hamilton right in Bahrain, even though the way it happened was not the way I thought it would happen. And I got Bottas right today. So that's 2 out of 4. And for you, Nib, I think is it 1 out of 4 this year?
I have no idea. I can't remember. I only remember my predictions. I know I got China perfectly correct. I know I got 1, 2, and 3 correct, but no, I can't remember my predictions from Bahrain or Australia, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I remember picking Hamilton to win in Bahrain, but I thought he'd do it because he'd have a quick enough car. But yeah, I got him right, and I got Bottas today right, so that's 2 out of 4. But I think one thing I have been lacking in when it comes to predicting or the podium positions is, say, second and third. That's really where my predictions do fall off. Even though today I predicted Bottas and Hamilton correctly, but I thought Verstappen would finish in third, but of course Vettel finished third. But Verstappen wasn't too far behind from doing that, so I was almost 100%. But there you go. And the final one I just missed. I'll go and find it now. There it is, from Sebastian. Who will come out on top between Leclerc or Vettel this season? Eventually, once he gets consistency going, it will be Charles Leclerc. I don't know the gap it'll be between the two, but I think Leclerc will beat him. I mean, he's only 5 points behind, and look what he did yesterday in qualifying. And look how he's been pace-wise in Australia and Shanghai. He wasn't that great. So I think Leclerc will beat Vettel this season, but I don't know how close it will be or, anything like that. But anyway, guys, that has been it for this race review for the 2019 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Great to have you guys along. Again, apologies about earlier, but nothing we can do about it. At least the strike has been removed and we can now continue going forward. And Nib, I have to say thank you very much for being supportive and also coming along to this to kind of complete what we couldn't complete earlier.
Yes, indeed. Of course, no issue for me staying up to it's just gone past 4:15 here in Melbourne. But I'm used to staying up this late. I'm a bit of a night owl with all the European sport that I watch, of course. But yeah, thanks for having me along. Disappointing, of course, what happened with the watch along today, but there's nothing we can do about it, and it certainly won't happen again, thankfully. So we're on to great things there, but we continued it here, brought the Haas puns back, and had a great time as we like to try and do when we're doing this. Try and make it a bit fun. But yeah, of course, thank you for everyone for tuning in today and the whole weekend, and hopefully we have once again a very good weekend when we come to Barcelona.
Absolutely, and hopefully we get similar viewership and all that stuff. And I just want to say, guys, thank you very much if you're new to the channel for subscribing and viewing the videos and streams. But thank you for being a viewer this weekend, because we have done so well. I know we would have got 1,000 viewers on the race watch along earlier if it wasn't for what happened. We had 1,200 people watch qualifying. So, such a great weekend. I can't thank you guys enough. It could have been better if it wasn't for that copyright strike, but sometimes that's just the way life happens. Doesn't always go your way. I compared it earlier when I was talking to some family members. I compared my copyright strike to Bottas's puncture in Baku last year. Having a great day ahead of you and then it just all falls away in an instant. So, it happens in life. So hopefully it won't happen again, and it shouldn't happen again. And don't worry, we'll be doing a watch along again for qualifying and the race and practice in Barcelona. So don't forget to come along to that in 2 weeks' time. But before I get reading out where you guys can follow me and, subscribe and all that stuff, I just want to let you guys know as to the content schedule between now and Barcelona. So, as I said earlier, on Thursday, let's start on Monday, tomorrow. Tomorrow at 12 PM UK time, I will be doing an incident analysis for this Grand Prix. I'm going to analyse 3 incidents. I'm not going to say right now what it is. I'll let you guys find out when you watch the video. But I'm going to analyse 3 incidents, 2 from qualifying and 1 from today's Grand Prix. That'll be uploaded tomorrow at 12 PM. And then there will be no videos until Thursday. I'm going to take a bit of a break and also get the next video ready and uploaded for Thursday. And that video is going to be about how Ferrari's 2019 has fell apart. That'll come out on Thursday. Then, of course, it's the podcast on Saturday, but it won't be live. The podcast will not be live because Nib won't be able to be there at that time on Saturday. So what we're going to do is pre-record it. So if you are in our Discord server, go to the podcast questions tab and put your questions in there, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can when we record it sometime during next week. So make sure to do that. And if, by the way, you're new to the channel, don't forget to join Discord, as that is the best place for notifications of my videos and is the hardcore Chaz HD F1 community. And again, if you want to ask a question for the podcast that will get read out, join that and go ahead and ask. But then after that, it'll be this week in Formula One. This week in Formula One, of course, last time was an uploaded video instead of a stream, because I was doing it, wasn't I, as a stream, but now I've decided I'm going to start doing it as an uploaded video because it did a lot better as an uploaded video the last time I uploaded it earlier this week. So this week in F1, which of course again is my news show, I will upload that the beginning of the week of the Spanish Grand Prix, and then I'm going to upload a video to do with all the teams, and it's going to be about how their 2019 has gone so far and where they need to improve from Barcelona on. That will come out the day before the Spanish Grand Prix weekend begins. So what, Thursday the 9th of May, something like that? So yeah, that is the content coming up between now and Spain. 5 videos, and hopefully you guys will come along and enjoy the videos as always. But again, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. We will absolutely continue to do watch-alongs and reviews for every Grand Prix in 2019. Do not worry about that. You can subscribe either bottom right of the screen or click on my channel name, go to the homepage and subscribe and hit the notifications bell. Don't forget to hit my video with a like and comment down below what you thought of this video and what you thought of the 2019 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Also, I've already plugged Discord, so you can, do what I said if you want to join. But also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110 and check out my website, chazahd.com, for more content like this. But guys, until my next video, tomorrow at 12 PM UK time, and until the 2019 Spanish Grand Prix, the next race on the Formula One calendar, it has been me, ChazahD. Goodbye.